This happened a few months ago. I'm 32 now, and I've been working night shifts at the hospital. It helps me pay the bills while I finish my nursing degree. I've seen a lot during those long hours, but I never expected anything strange. At least, not in my first week on the job. The hospital felt standard. Bright lights and stark white walls made it seem sterile. I was used to the quiet, just me and the beeping of monitors. But during my second shift, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I thought that was odd. I got up and peered out. The hallway was empty. I shrugged it off and went back to my station. The footsteps didn't stop. Each night I'd hear them echo through the hallways. Sometimes I could even hear children's laughter, even though no kids were admitted at this hour. One night I was taking a break in the break room when I heard those footsteps again. They sounded closer. My heart started racing. I glanced around, but it was just me, with the hum of the machines. A few nights later, I found an old file. It was buried under some papers in the records room. The name on it was familiar. It belonged to a child who had been in the hospital years ago. The case was unusual and had ended unexpectedly. The child had vanished without a trace. I read the notes, but they didn't sit well with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that this might connect to the laughter and footsteps I kept hearing. The next night, as I walked by the pediatric ward, the footsteps returned, along with a faint giggle. I felt cold. It was like someone was watching me. I hesitated, but opened the door to the clay area. The swing set was rocking back and forth. I stood frozen, my heart racing. My instincts screamed to leave. Then I heard my name. It was a soft whisper, barely above the sound of creaking swings. I thought, maybe I'm just tired. But I knew that wasn't true. I took a few steps back and glanced into the empty hallway, feeling an unnatural chill. It felt like something was standing right behind me, but when I turned around, I saw nothing. My heart pounded. Pushing the thought away, I tried to focus, but then I heard it again, a child's voice softly calling, "Daniel." I looked around. No one was there. The air felt heavier. I wanted to leave. I was scared, but I couldn't just ignore it. I took a deep breath and walked down the hallway toward the voice. It was still quiet. My footsteps echoed on the tiles, and I felt uneasy. I stepped into a nearby room, but it only led to more silence. The hospital felt alive with whispers. I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I turned to leave the room, the swing set creaked again, this time more violently. I rushed out of the room, heart racing. I didn't know what I was dealing with. All I knew was that I wanted to escape this haunting silence and the unanswered questions that followed me through those endless night shifts. I barely slept that day.
I spent my off hours going through every old file I could find, hoping to uncover more about the child whose case haunted me. The name felt like a weight on my chest. I needed answers, something to explain the strange noises. But the records were scarce, and every article I came across led me further into a maze of sorrow. That night, the atmosphere at the hospital felt heavier. The lights flickered, and the silence seemed almost unbearable as I settled back into my night shift. I hoped to keep my mind busy, but I found myself glancing at the pediatric ward more than I wanted to admit. When the clock hit 2 a.m., the footsteps started again. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but as I sat at the nurse's station, I couldn't ignore the sound any longer. It was faint at first, but grew louder, moving closer. My stomach twisted. I gripped the edge of the desk. I finally gathered the courage to stand and investigate. As I walked toward the pediatric ward, I caught sight of something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow flickered down the hallway. I hesitated, heart racing, but fear pushed me forward. Maybe I was getting closer to the source of the disturbance. I approached the play area. The swings hung still, but the air felt different, charged, like before a storm. I hesitated to cross the threshold, but then I noticed something on the floor. A small, worn teddy bear lay beneath the swing. It hadn't been there before. My heart sank. I felt exposed, like the room was alive and watching me. Just as I reached down to pick it up, the temperature in the room dropped. I pulled pulled my hand back. The whispers swirled around me, darting in and out of comprehension. But then, clear as day, I heard that familiar voice again. "Daniel." It was urgent now, tinged with fear. Suddenly, the room went cold. I whipped around to find the door I had entered through standing wide open. The hallway beyond was dark, and the footsteps began again, this time accompanied by a soft, pleading sound that echoed through the corridors. "Help me!" Panic coursed through me, my breath catching in my throat. I backed away from the play area, but that voice stopped me in my tracks. It felt real, desperate. It tore at my insides. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice trembling. The only response was an eerie silence, broken only by the rocking chair suddenly creaking in the corner of the room. Its rhythm was rapid, almost frantic. Then, as if an answer, I saw it, a flicker of a tiny figure at the end of the hall. A child, dressed in faded pajamas, standing alone in the darkness. My breath hitched. I took a hesitant step forward, the world around me narrowing to just this moment. "Wait," I shouted out, but the figure had vanished, swallowed by the night. I felt my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't know what I had just witnessed, but I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. With shaky hands, I grabbed the teddy bear.
I needed to find out where it had come from and who it belonged to. That was my only clue. As I turned to leave, the lights flickered violently. I stumbled back. Then, everything went dark. I stood in the darkness, my pulse racing. I blinked, hoping to regain my senses. The only sound was the soft thump of my heart echoing in the silence. I fumbled for my flashlight, my fingers trembling as I clicked it on. The beam sliced through the black, revealing the empty pediatric ward. "Hello," I called out, forcing my voice to sound steady. No answer, just the unsettling stillness of the hospital. The air felt thick, closing in around me. But I was not going to let fear win. I had to know what was happening. I approached the door, half expecting the ghostly voice to return. The teddy bear felt heavy in my hand, a tangible connection to whatever mystery was unfolding. I stepped hesitantly into the hallway, the flashlight beam dancing across the walls, illuminating the faded hospital posters and flickering emergency lights. With each step, the weight on my chest grew heavier. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this. I had heard that name so many times, Daniel. But who was he, and why was he calling for help? As I moved down the corridor, I felt the hairs on my neck stand on end. It wasn't just me. Something was here. A chill shot through the air as I reached the nurse's station. My eyes darted to the small glass cabinet that housed old patient records. My gut twisted. If I was going to find answers, I'd need to dig deeper. I swung open the cabinet, rifling through stacks of dusty files. Scattered papers and old charts sprawled across the desk. I searched for anything related to Daniel, but the stacks offered little. Time slipped away as I focused on finding that elusive piece of information. The sound of my own breathing filled the void of the station. That's when I saw it. A file tucked away behind others, slightly ajar. I pulled it out, my heart racing again. The label read, Daniel Turner. I opened the file and scanned the documents. There were reports of his hospitalization, treatment plans, and notes scribbled by doctors. What caught my eye, though, was a date, April 12th, the same date that echoed in the whispers of the hospital. A tiny photograph fluttered to the floor. I gasped as I picked it up. It was a picture of a sad-looking child with dark eyes that seemed to stare right into my soul. Beneath the image, someone had written, "Always here." I froze, staring at the photo. I had seen that face before, the child from the shadows, the one who called my name. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the pediatric ward. The sound jolted me from my tots, my body igniting with adrenaline. I dropped the file and rushed back towards the sound, heart pounding in my ears. As I neared the play area again, the door swung open violently as if pushed by an unseen force. The air felt electric, charged with energy.
And then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of laughter, a child's laughter, echoing through the empty hall. The voice bubbled up again. "Help me, Daniel." The urgency was undeniable. I swallowed hard, uncertain if I was being led into danger or deeper into the truth. Either way, I had to find out what was happening. With every step, I felt the pull of something far greater than myself. As the laughter faded into frantic whispers, I stepped through the doorway, fully prepared to confront whatever awaited me in the darkness. I had come too far to turn back now. I stepped into the play area, my flashlight slicing through the dark. Toys lay scattered on the floor, remnants of childhood joy now tainted by the silence of the ghostly hospital. The laughter had faded, replaced by a soft whimper. My heart raced as I scanned the room. "Daniel," I whispered, testing the name that had haunted my thoughts. Then I spotted it, a shadow against the far wall, a flicker of movement just out of reach of my light. I edged closer, each footstep echoing like a drum. As the beam illuminated the corner, my breath caught. There, hugging a deflated rubber ball, was the same boy from the photograph. But he was different. His skin was pale, and his eyes were wide, reflecting pure fear. "Please help me," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "Where are you?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. He pointed to the ground, a clear indication of where I should look. But before I could comprehend, the shadows wrapped around him like a cloak. He vanished, leaving only the ball rolling slowly across the floor. I shut my eyes, trying to steady myself. A cold sweat trickled down my back. "This isn't real," I mumbled. But it felt too real. The air around me thickened, and an overwhelming sense of dread rose in my throat. I thought of the files. Maybe there was something there that could help me understand what I was experiencing. I turned to leave, but the corridor felt different. It was darker, as if the shadows had crept in closer, ready to envelop me. The playful ambiance was gone, replaced by a heavy quiet that clawed at my sanity. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting eerily shifting shadows. Then I saw a flicker of movement at the end of the hall. I hesitated, but felt an urgency pull me forward. I followed the flickers, hoping for an answer, only to find myself in the doctor's break room. It was dimly lit, a space filled with leftover coffee cups and an outdated vending machine. On the table lay a game board, pieces meticulously arranged as if someone had just been playing. My curiosity piqued. I walked over, but the moment my fingers brushed against the pieces, a chill wrapped around me. The door slammed shut. My heart raced. Every instinct told me to run, but I was frozen in place. "Help me," the voice came again, louder this time. It was unmistakably the boy's. I felt a sudden surge of urgency. I had to find out what he needed.
But as I turned back to the door, a wall of darkness sprung up before me. I felt an overwhelming force pushing against me, like being trapped in a vacuum. The laughter started again, echoing, swirling around me like a haunting melody. I pressed against the door, desperate to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic rose in my chest. How could I face whatever was on the other side? And then, deep within the shadows, a figure began to take shape. I squinted, barely making out a familiar silhouette. The figure stepped closer, the outline sharp against the dark. "Daniel!" it called. I realized it wasn't just the boy. Something far more sinister was approaching. I shuddered, the weight of the night pressing down. I had to escape, but as the very air seemed to constrict, I knew my answers lay ahead. I just had to confront the horror coming my way. The figure moved closer, the shadows trailing behind it like smoke. My heart felt like it might explode. I was paralyzed, staring as the familiar silhouette took on more detail. It was no longer just a dark shape. I could see features now, a gaunt face, sunken eyes, and an unsettling grin that made my skin crawl. "Help me!" Daniel's voice echoed again, fragmented and pleading. "Get away from him!" I yelled, finally finding my voice. The words felt weak, as if I could somehow command the darkness with them, but it only pressed in tighter, swallowing my shout. The figure laughed, a low, mocking sound that rolled like thunder. "He can't be helped," it hissed, a voice that crackled like static. "He belongs to us now." I stumbled back, feeling the cold metal of the table dig into my legs. The game pieces jostled, some toppling over, a chaotic mess that mirrored my mind. I had to think clearly. If Daniel was here, trapped somehow, then maybe there was a way to reach him. The shadows around the figure pulsed, revealing glimpses of other forms trapped within, faces contorted in fear just like Daniel's. Each one was a reminder of lost hope. A deep sense of dread clung to me, but I pressed forward, forcing myself to take a step closer to Daniel's ghostly presence, my flashlight shaking in my grip. "Daniel!" I shouted, my voice stronger this time. "Tell me where to find you." "Under the floor,"
he whispered, his voice now weak and echoing as if coming from afar. "He won't let you." I felt a surge of determination. I didn't care about whatever sinister force held sway here. I needed to help him. I glanced around, searching for something, anything that could aid me. Then I noticed the floor tiles near the table. They looked different, as if they had been shifted recently. I dropped to my knees, scarcely aware of the figure watching me, laughing softly. My fingers fumbled against the edges of the tiles, and I pressed down, trying to dislodge them. There was resistance at first, but then I felt a give. The air was thick as I pulled the tiles aside, revealing a small, dark opening beneath. A faint light shimmered down below, like a beacon. I leaned closer. "Daniel, I found it! I can help you!" But the shadows tightened around me, a chill seeping into my bones. I could feel the malicious presence inching closer, its laughter echoing in my mind. It was furious. I had to hurry. I reached down, feeling a sense of urgency surge through my veins. "Don't let him take you!" Daniel cried out. In that moment, I knew I couldn't hesitate. I slid my flashlight into the opening, and then my arm followed, diving into the darkness. My heart raced with hope and fear. I felt the cool air wrap around my hand, and then I grasped something small and warm. That's when everything erupted in chaos. The lights flickered, and for a second I saw the figure lunging towards me in the darkness. My instincts kicked in. I yanked my arm back, pulling the object with me. As I scrambled back, the shadow screamed. I clutched the warm object tightly as the darkness recoiled. Breathing heavily, I turned the beam of my flashlight on what I had found. It was a small, beat-up teddy bear, worn but familiar. I glanced up, expecting to see Daniel, but the room was empty. The figure was gone. But outside the doorway, shadows writhed, whispering his name. The very wall seemed to pulse with anticipation. Now I had a choice. Would I face the darkness again to find him, or flee with this token of hope? I took a deep breath, clutching the teddy bear. It felt comforting, even with its frayed edges and missing button eye. Daniel had loved this bear. Maybe it held some connection to him, a way to bridge the gap between us. But I couldn't linger. The shadows outside the doorway felt alive, squirming and shifting like smoke. They seemed to pull me in, whispering, "Come back." I steeled myself. Daniel was under the floor, and those whispers only fueled my determination. I needed to get to him. I moved cautiously toward the opening, guided by the faint light that still flickered below. I couldn't shake off the feeling that the figure would return any second. I needed to be quick. "Stay with me, Daniel," I murmured, my voice hardly above a whisper. I knew it was a long shot, but I needed to believe he could hear me. I clambered back down on my knees and peered into the dark hole. The faint glow beckoned, and I felt a pulse of energy radiate from the teddy bear, as if it were alive, offering me reassurance that I was on the right path. Inching forward, I placed the teddy bear beside the opening, hoping it would somehow guide Daniel. "I'm coming for you," I shouted into the abyss, my voice steady. Then, without thinking twice, I lowered myself into the darkness. The moment my feet hit the gold surface below, I understood how deep it really was. I had expected a crawl space. Instead, I found a narrow tunnel, damp and littered with old newspapers, a strange archive of memories. A faint scent of decay seeped from the walls, sending a jolt of unease through me. As I shuffled forward, the tunnel twisted and turned, and the dim light flickered, leaving me vulnerable in its grasp. The shadows from above seemed to hang just out of reach, taunting me. I squinted deeper into the tunnel, desperate for any sign of Daniel. Then I heard it, a soft, muffled sound, almost like muffled cries or whispers echoing through the tunnel. My heart leaped. "Daniel?" I moved faster, my legs trembling slightly with each step. The light ahead brightened and fell away, revealing a small chamber. The cries grew louder, urging me closer. But as I reached the end, my breath hitched. The glow was coming from the wall, where old, peeling paint revealed strange symbols etched into the stone. It looked almost like a language I couldn't understand. I traced my fingers across the symbols, feeling a tremor of energy pulse through me. Each mark seemed alive, pulsating beneath my touch. Suddenly, the cries stopped. An eerie silence enveloped me, pressing like a weight on my chest. The bear in my pocket felt heavy. That's when I saw it, a shadow forming in the corner of the chamber, twisting away from the light. My heart sank. I knew instinctively that this wasn't just the haunting presence anymore. This was something else. more sinister. "Daniel!" I called out once more, my voice a shaky whisper against the thick silence. Before I could process what was happening, the shadow lunged. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to flee, the darkness closing in around me. I stumbled back down the tunnel, adrenaline surging as I felt the pressure of the figure's presence trailing close behind me. The entrance was still open, but would I reach it in time? I felt panic rise in my throat. I knew I had to get back to the teddy bear, to find Daniel before it was too late. The shadows shrieked in frustration. I could hear them, and they grew louder as I ran. I was running out of time, but I had to believe I could save him. The tunnel felt endless as I raced back, my breath coming in harsh bursts. The shadows shrieked, angry and relentless. I could almost feel their cold breath on my neck. Panic clawed at my throat, echoing the cries I'd heard earlier. I didn't dare look back. I focused solely on the light ahead, the hope of safety that flickered like a dying ember. Just when I thought I might reach the entrance, I stumbled. My foot caught on something, debris perhaps. I fell forward and caught myself just in time, pushing off with urgency. The shadow came closer, a darkness that seemed to stretch and elongate with each heartbeat. It was alive and hungry, and that thought sent a shiver down my spine. I finally burst through the opening, breathing heavily as I bowled myself into the room above. I turned to grab the teddy bear from the ground, my heart racing, but then I froze. Where was it? I looked around frantically. It had vanished. The spot where I'd left it was bare. "No, no, no," I whispered, fear bubbling within me.
I took a step back, scanning the room. Had it been swept away by the shadows, or was something else at play? As I backed away, a low rumble echoed through the darkness. It wasn't just the shadows. It felt like the house itself was alive, shifting and bending around me. I felt the air grow thicker, charged with energy. I reached for the wall, desperately trying to steady myself. And then I heard it, a faint voice, barely audible, echoing softly in the air. "Help me." It wasn't loud, but the desperation in it cut through the chaos. "Daniel?" I called out, my voice unsteady. The air felt electric, and I was both terrified and determined. "Help me," the voice repeated, growing clearer but still muffled, as if it came from deep within the house. The shadows around me whispered and twisted, coiling like smoke. In that moment, a flicker caught my eye. A corner of the room shimmered with a dim light, pulsing like a heartbeat. What was that? I hesitated, a mix of dread and curiosity tugging at me. But I had to find Daniel. I crept closer, drawn to the light. As I neared, I could make out a shape, a figure standing just beyond the pulse of brightness. My heart raced. "Daniel?" I called out again, hope igniting inside me. Then the light flickered violently, and for a brief moment, everything went dark. A chill flooded the room, and I felt the presence of the shadow behind me, looming closer than ever. I had to make a choice, flee or confront whatever darkness awaited. The voice whispered again, a haunting echo wrapped in urgency. "Help me." I took a deep breath, resolved. I couldn't run anymore. I needed answers. I needed to find Daniel. But the darkness around me stirred, and something unthinkable was coming for me. As I reached for the flickering light, I knew I had stumbled upon something bigger, something that would change everything. And just like that, I was plunged into a mystery that was all my own. I reached for the light, but before I could touch it, everything went cold, as if winter had seeped into the walls. I stumbled back, fear coursing through me like icy water. The shadows shifted, snapping and clawing as they closed in. I had to get a grip. Panic wasn't going to save Daniel. "Help me," the voice echoed again, now more urgent. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I felt like the darkness itself was a living thing, pressing against my skin, daring me to move. I didn't want to stay, but the pull of that voice anchored me in place. I glanced around the room, searching for a door, a way out. The once familiar surroundings now felt strange, furniture distorted, shadows seemed to dance in unnatural ways. I could feel the weight of dread heavy in the air. Then I had an idea. I needed to find a way to reach the source of that voice, to open up whatever had triggered it. It was like a thread in the dark, drawing me closer. I took a deep breath and approached the shimmering light again, cautiously. As I got closer, I could see it wasn't just a flicker. It was a doorway, thin and barely visible, but it pulsed with that warm glow. I reached out, my fingers grazing the edge, and a shock ran through me, a spark of energy, like static electricity. "What do you want?" I called out, hoping for an answer. The voice faded for a second, and I felt the world shift around me. Then something shifted behind me.
I turned, heart pounding, and saw a dark shape lurking in the corner. It was there, watching, waiting. My throat tightened, and I felt every muscle in my body scream for me to run. Instead, I stood my ground, adrenaline surging. "If you want me, come and get me," I shouted, defiance slipping into my voice. In response, the shadows writhed, swirling violently. The dark shape began to grow, expanding as it surged towards me. I felt a rush of cold air, like a heavy weight pressing against my shoulders. It wanted to consume me, to draw me into that darkness. Then, the warm glow from the doorway flickered, and I caught a glimpse of something just beyond the light. A small figure, too distorted to make out. It screamed, a desperate cry trailing off as the shadows roared around me. My heart raced as a wave of memories flooded back. Daniel, his laughter, his comfort. A shadow swung, and instinct kicked in. I dove towards the ethereal light, feeling the cold breaths of the shadows racing past me. I could feel their anger, a visceral need to keep me trapped. I pushed through the doorway, and just as I did, the world exploded into bright luminescence. I found myself in a small room, disoriented and still pumping with fear. The flickering shadows from earlier were gone, and I was alone for a moment. But as my eyes adjusted, I noticed something. A doll lying on the floor, its painted eyes shining against the gloom. My heart dropped. There was something familiar about it. That's when I saw it, a small note pinned to the doll's dress. I hesitated, heart pounding in my ears. What did it say? What did it mean? As I approached, the shadows shrieked again from the doorway behind me. I turned, and a chill crawled up my spine. Something else was following me. The note trembled in my hand as I reached for it. I grabbed the edge, my fingers brushing against the fabric of the doll's dress. I pulled it free, heart racing, and read the hastily scrawled words, "Find me in the darkness." The shadows roared again, sounding like a chorus of whispers twisting into a shout. I glanced over my shoulder. The doorway shimmered ominously, dark shapes swirling just beyond the threshold. Whatever had been chasing me was still there, angry and waiting. I needed answers, and fast. "Find you where?" I muttered, frustration bubbling up. I turned back to the doll and studied its features. Its painted eyes seemed to follow me. An eerie sensation crept up my spine. It was as if the doll was alive, more than just porcelain and paint. I dropped to my knees, gripping the doll tightly, hoping it would somehow protect me. Then I noticed something else. The floor beneath the doll had a faint outline, like an imprint of something. I leaned closer. It looked like a trapdoor, blending into the wood, but not quite. I pressed down on the edges, feeling a soft resistance, and before I realized it, I had shifted the panel enough to reveal a dark space underneath. The shadows rustled behind me, and a cold draft brushed across my neck. I felt like every hair had stood on end. I had to focus on the moment. Crawling forward, adrenaline pushed me, and I reached for the opening, peering inside the darkness. This is a mistake, I thought. Yet as the words echoed in my mind, I could still hear Daniel's laughter from long ago. "You can't give up on me," the voice whispered. "I'm counting on you." With trembling fingers, I pulled the trapdoor all the way open. It creaked and groaned, revealing a narrow passage that sank down into the darkness. The cold air rushed out as if it hungered for me. "Daniel," I called, uncertainty pooling in my gut. No response came, but I felt that familiar pull. I couldn't turn back. The shadows danced at the edge of the doorway, taunting me. I hesitated only a moment before slipping into the passage. I felt like I was diving headfirst into a pool of ice. My body screamed at me to retreat, but my mind was set. I had to uncover the truth. The passage was cramped and dark. My heart hammered as I crawled, feeling the walls pressing in. The air was thick, heavy with dust and memories I didn't recognize. I pushed through, recalling the doll's message. "Find me in the darkness." Was it talking about Daniel, or something else? I paused. A glimmer of light flickered just ahead. It was faint, but inviting, a stark contrast to the oppressive dark. I crept closer, hope mingling with dread.
What would I find? What else was lurking with me in this darkness? Suddenly, laughter echoed through the passage, chilling my blood. It was Daniel's laugh, only it wasn't right. Something warped and twisted lurked just ahead, and I felt a primal surge of fear claw at my insides. I had to move. The shadows hissed as I inched ahead, uncertainty consuming me. That's when I saw it, a figure standing in the light. But it didn't belong there. My breath caught. I was not alone anymore. The figure turned slowly, revealing the familiar face I had seen in the photograph, the gaunt, sorrowful expression of Daniel Turner. But he wasn't just standing. He appeared suspended, caught between this world and something darker. The shadows writhed beneath his feet, whispering as they pulled tightly around him, eager to reclaim what they had lost. "Help me," he begged, his voice strained with urgency. My heart felt heavy, but I had come too far to stop now. I stepped closer, ignoring the way the darkness clawed greedily at my ankles. I reached out, desperate to grasp his hand. "I'm here. What do you need?"
Daniel looked at me with wide, pleading eyes, filled with a fear I had never seen in a child. "You need to return the bear," he murmured, the words barely escaping his lips. "They won't let me go without it." The noise of the shadows grew louder, angry and fearful, as if they understood what I held against them. I shuffled closer, clutching the doll tightly in my other hand. "Where do I return it?" He turned toward the swirling mass behind him, shadows undulating in protest. "You have to find the circle," he said, voice trembling. "The light will lead you. Please, you have to hurry." Just then, a rush of darkness enveloped the space, a surge that swept through the passage. My vision blurred for a second, and when it cleared, Daniel was changing, stretching, thinning. Panic gripped me as I realized the shadows were pulling him away, his expression shifting from fearful to resigned. "No!" I shouted, lunging forward. My hand brushed against his. It felt like touching smoke, fleeting and ephemeral. The connection broke, and Daniel gasped, vanishing into the darkness. The laughter erupted again, but this time it was twisted and malevolent. My heart raced, breathing heavily as I staggered back, gasping for air. "Find the circle," I repeated to myself, scrambling to regain my bearings. I turned, scanning the growing darkness that seemed to pulse with life. The room glowed faintly ahead, the remnants of his light still flickering like a candle caught in a storm. I sprinted toward it, pushing through the suffocating air. I felt breathless as I followed the glow, stumbling on the uneven ground until I finally burst into a larger chamber, expansive yet dimly lit. The walls were covered in remnants of past lives, distinct symbols etched into the stone, some that matched the markings on the doll. The air was thick with tension as I moved further inside. The glow beckoned me forward, unveiling a large circular space in the center. A faint shimmer swirled within the circle, a soft light beckoning me. "This is it," I thought, the dread freezing in my chest. I peeled open the doll's dress, pulling out the note and clutching the bear tightly. "I need to place them here," I whispered, my heart pounding. "Please let this work." But as I knelt down, shadows began to swirl again, anger seeping into the air like a tangible force. "You won't take him," I shouted defiantly. I dropped the bear and the note into the circle and felt a wave of warmth wash over me, as if I'd unlocked something within the darkness. Suddenly, the air crackled with energy. The chamber began to pulse with light. It brightened almost painfully, wreathing the circle in a vibrant glow. I felt a surging force rip through the room. The shadows shrieked, swirling violently as though trying to flee. "Daniel," I shouted, desperation coursing through my veins. "I'm here. Come back." I watched as the energy surged from the circle, a brilliant white light illuminating every inch of the room.
The shadows twisted and bucked against it, fighting to take hold. But one clear shape began materializing within that brightness. Daniel. He emerged, his face lit with tears of gratitude. I could see the determination etched across his features. He reached for the bear, and as he touched it, the shadows shrieked louder, almost pleading. "It's time to go, Daniel," I urged, my heart racing. His eyes met mine, etched with a flame of hope. Together, we stood immovable against the darkness that now writhed at the edges of our light.
The explosive energy intensified, illuminating the chamber as the shadows screamed in fury. Just as I thought I couldn't take it any longer, the shadows recoiled, devoured by the light, and Daniel reached out. As we clasped hands, a loud crack filled the air, the ground beneath us quaking as the darkness shattered in a blinding burst of light. I felt myself being heaved backwards, propelled but weightless. Then it was gone. The light faded, and I found myself back in the hospital, crumpled on the floor, alone. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent bulbs, feeling cold and disoriented. The bear was gone, as well as the voice that had haunted me for so long. All that remained was the stillness of the empty corridor and the dim sounds of the hospital all around me. I took a deep breath, uncertainty gnawing at my senses. I closed my eyes, lost in thought, hoping Daniel was finally at peace. But there was still a heaviness in my chest, an unshakable feeling that something lingered, something not yet resolved. I didn't know whether I had truly saved him or simply postponed whatever force had trapped him in that twisted realm. The shadows had been silenced for now, but the questions they left behind echoed within me, like the fading laughter of a child, forever haunting the hallways of my mind. With a trembling heart and no real understanding of what I had just experienced, I stepped away from the pediatric ward and back into the night, leaving behind the memories of darkness and uncertainty, burdened by a lingering doubt of what truly lay in the shadows.